Welcome to Fireside Giants. My name is Alex with my co-host here, Anthony Rivardo. We're coming off the second preseason game of the year for the Giants against the Cleveland Browns. And there was a lot of positives and a lot of negatives. But for the most part, I saw more positives, despite the reserves on defense having a couple of issues here and there. But for the most part, we saw some better offensive line play, which was a huge positive because last week against the Jets, though our reserve offensive linemen were a complete disaster. That was a really big problem for us. But now, we saw a lot better performance from them this week. I think that was a major sign of growth and progress, and at least just the coaching staff kind of harping down on them to really produce more because we needed to see more. The Giants sat all of their starters today. They only really played Xavier McKinney for a couple snaps in the beginning. They took him out pretty quickly just to get him some familiarity and just get him onto the field for a couple snaps here and there. But for the most part, it was the Mike Glennon show, the Brian Lewerke show. We saw some good performances out of this team, Anthony. But, before we dive into all the different things that we saw, how you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing good. I'm tired because that was a kind of boring game, preseason game, no starters. And it came down to the end. It was an exciting finish to the game, but for the most part, not high scoring, nothing like that. But all good. We did get to see some specific players have some good performances. I want to give instant shout out to Ryzen John, tight end on the Giants. Actually looked like a premier vertical threat at times going down the seam. Looked like a really good player. He did get injured at the end, though. I hope it's nothing serious. It was a non-contact injury, so those are obviously scarier than any contact injury. So hopefully it's nothing serious. Hopefully he's able to bounce back because this is a player who looked like he was about to lock his way onto the 53-man roster because he was playing that good today. So there were some exciting performances. Again, Carter Coughlin, we'll touch on all of those individual performances that we were impressed by. But the Giants are now 0-2 in the preseason. Take of that what you will. I don't really care. Some people might. But Cleveland Browns improved to 2-0. Pretty decent game. Was hoping to see Brian Lewerke put together the game-winning drive at the end there. But they came up just a bit short. No big deal, though. Preseason exhibition. Who really cares?
Yeah, ultimately, this is kind of the game that decided a lot of the fates for those practice squad guys and the roster bubble guys at the end of the day. Next week, we're going to see a lot more of the starters. The Giants only have until the 31st, so 9 days from now, like immediately after that third preseason game next week, we're going to get the roster cuts down to 53, and it's going to be a lot of guys moving to the practice squad, a lot of guys hitting the free agency market. Getting injured in this game was a really bad thing to happen. The Giants had a couple defensive backs go down, including Quincy Wilson with an ankle injury, and I believe Madre Harper also got knocked out with a groin injury. So those are two players, defensive backs. I think Quincy Wilson looked pretty good. He had an interception. For the most part, I was really excited by his performance. I think he will make this roster despite the ankle injury. I think Madre Harper, he's a fringe guy, could make it, but I think we needed to see more from him. Essentially, yeah, that injury, if he keeps him out next week, is going to write his story for probably free agent market or maybe the practice squad. And then you have the Sam Beal situation. Sam Beal looked like an absolute dog poo. He was not good. They did really target him a lot, even though they had a wide receiver, the Giants, with Quincy Wilson and Madre Harper going down. The Giants had Matt Cole, the wide receiver, playing cornerback opposite Sam Beal. And Kyle Lauletta, the Browns' third-string quarterback, was still targeting Sam Beal, and he was not doing well. Like he tried to elevate for an interception. He jumped way too early, flew right over his head for a completion, another completion on him. So, he did not look that great. In the run game, he actually made a nice stop, so that was encouraging. But for the most part, the secondary was picked apart throughout the game. I thought there was a couple of good performances. Quincy Wilson, until the injury, was looking good. Like Anthony mentioned before, Carter Coughlin looked awesome. Not so much in coverage, but as a blitzing inside linebacker, or even he can kind of like move outside to outside linebacker to inside linebacker. He can do a bunch of different things. He's good against the run. But what I saw the most from him was him at the line of scrimmage. There was one play where he completely just pushes a guard all the way across the formation, jumps right up the middle and collects a sack. Him and BJ Hill together kind of comboed there for a sack on Lauletta, I believe. So really saw a lot from him. And I thought that was a really good thing for the Giants because they want players who can play multiple spots. Carter Coughlin has the flexibility and versatility to move around a lot. Anthony, when you're looking at him, I imagine you saw the same thing I did.
Yeah, phenomenal pass rusher from the interior, or from the inside linebacker position, kind of the interior. But this is a player who came out of college as a really good edge rusher. So he had all the pass rushing moves, had all the productivity as well coming out of Minnesota. But then he goes to the NFL, has some decent productivity as a rookie playing edge. Giants move him to inside linebacker. And like I said in the last video, this guy looks like he's been playing that position for 5 years. He doesn't look like he's still learning the position. He is playing it really well. And I understand maybe he's not the best in coverage. Of course not. He was an edge rusher. This is a part of his game that we need to see the Giants continue to develop, continue to help him grow in the coverage aspect of his game. And honestly, I don't think he looked as bad in coverage as most people did. Like, I didn't think he was just terrible in coverage, like the way people are trying to describe him in that way. I thought that he looked like your typical inside linebacker who's a better pass rusher. Like, I don't know. I thought that he just looked really good again, though. I think he's got really high instincts, high IQ. Even when he did get beaten coverage, it's not like he's missing a tackle and letting the guy get a ton of yards after the catch. He's getting there as soon as the catch is made and then bringing them down. That's really what I saw from Carter Coughlin, which is kind of what you see from young linebackers when they're still learning the position, which is exactly what he is. He's completely relearning how to play the sport from a new position. And I think that's really important that he keeps popping up as one of the better players on the defense, considering he is still learning a brand new position. It's like he's a rookie 2 years in a row almost. He's got some experience, and the experience that he got last year is obviously helping him, but still, new position, whole lot of new jobs that he has in that new role that he's playing. And he's really doing actually a great job in that new role. And I've been super impressed with Carter Coughlin. 2 weeks in a row now, he got a sack both weeks back to back. And he's just playing really good football at this moment. He had a great summer, a lot of great practices during training camp. And I think that he's a guy, obviously, to me, a lock to make the final 53. But I think that he's a guy that we're going to see on the field quite a bit in the regular season.
I agree. I think he's a lock to make the final 53 roster too. I think the way that they can use him against mobile quarterbacks, he's really good in that spy position. They used him against Seattle last year in that spy spot, and I think he can do a lot of good things for this defense, especially because Patrick Graham likes to create confusion, likes to get a little unique with his style and strategy, and I think that Carter Coughlin can move around and offer that. But I do want to talk about the overall defense. They did struggle for the most part. The Browns moved the ball pretty well against them, especially to open the game, moved right down the field and scored a touchdown almost immediately after the Giants, it was a 3-and-out punt. So like I thought we'd see a little bit better of a performance from the Giants defense overall. I know that it's not the starters, but I thought our depth was a lot better than that, I guess. I wasn't totally discouraged, but I do think I was expecting more. I thought the injuries definitely played a part with Quincy Wilson and Madre Harper going down early. But I will say this, the defensive line played pretty well. Raymond Johnson, undrafted free agent, he looks really good. You mentioned Trent Harris before the video started. Trent Harris looked really good, and Carter Coughlin looked really good. Ocean Eximenez, he looked pretty damn good too. And David Moa, that was my sleeper going to this. David Moa, low-key, had a solid game, and he did it against the Jets too. He's had 2 back-to-back good preseason performances. I think he had 6 or 7 tackles in this game. He's a guy that I think is going to make the 53-man roster. I would not be surprised if he competed with Austin Johnson and Danny Shelton for starting snaps, and that might be a hot take, but David Moa, low-key, was all over the field. He was putting pressure on the quarterback. He was stopping the run. He was filling those A and B gaps. I was really, really excited to see that type of performance from another interior defensive lineman. The Giants just churn out defensive linemen. It's crazy. And I thought that was a positive sign, especially with Ocean Eximenez. Get a couple of really nice swim moves, a couple of nice, just clubs on the outside and the bend he showed. It looked like the old Ocean Eximenez from old Dominion. He is a good player. He's just been dealing with injuries. The labrum issue he held out with last year knocked him out for the entire season for the most part. I was expecting him to take another step forward. And I think this year, if he can stay healthy, we're going to see him rotate in. It's going to be the Azeez Ojulari show, the Lorenzo Carter show. But I think that Ocean Eximenez is going to find a way to make an impact. He's a solid pass rusher, and the Giants should not be giving up on him. I do think he's going to make the roster. Anthony, did you see something similar? Do you think that he is a lock to make the roster? Or do you think that he needs to put another good game together?
I don't think he's a lock just due to the amount of depth that the Giants have at the position. But yeah, I am really impressed with David Moa and do think that he's working his way towards the 53-man roster. Of course, before the preseason started, I said, I don't know who he is. I doubt he makes that much of an impact, and I doubt he really has a shot at the 53-man roster. So for me to now be saying I think that he has a really good shot at making the 53-man roster should tell you how well he's been playing over the past 2 weeks and how much he's really changed my mind and really stood out to me on the tape when I'm watching these games. So he's done a really good job, David Moa. I like him a lot. Not saying he's any lock to make the roster. It's really too soon to tell with him, especially considering the depth that we have at the position. But he is playing really well, and he's playing to the point where I'm saying I think he's got a good shot of making the 53-man roster, which, again, big change from how I felt 3 weeks ago. So definitely impressed with David Moe. I saw him have a couple nice run blocking or run defending snaps, and also saw him get into the backfield for a couple pressures here and there too. So pretty exciting to see from a guy who's playing basically the 0-1 tech position, be getting in the backfield as a pass rusher. You always like to see stuff like that.
Yeah, and some standout performers on the defensive side of the ball. Of course, as I mentioned, Ocean Ximenez, he had 3 quarterback hits, which led the team. He had a sack. And then you have Ryan Anderson had half a sack and a quarterback hit. Raymond Johnson had half a sack, a tackle for a loss, and a QB hit. So that was a good performance from him. And Rodarius Williams, he looked pretty solid. I was pretty excited to see him bounce back in a strong way after kind of having a tough game last week. He did play a lot out of the slot. In this game as well, he picked up 7 total tackles, 6 solos, and a pass defended. They did pick on him at times, but for the most part, I like the way that he responded. You know, the one thing that he needs, and what Joe Judge said, he essentially just needs more reps. He's a guy that has the talent, he has the skills, has the physicality, just needs more of a sample size to understand what receivers do. There was one completion on him that I think it was Johnson. I forget his first name. Chris Johnson, possibly the safety, and he just was way too far back. Rodarius Williams pushed the receiver inside. The safety should have been there to undercut the route. He just wasn't there. So for the most part, Rodarius Williams looked good to me. He had a couple of snaps in the slot where he was traveling across the line of scrimmage and on the hip of the receiver. Thought that was a great sign. He lined up against some tight ends, some bigger bodies. He looked good against them too. Again, he did give up a couple of completions, but for the most part, a good bounce back game for him. I was really excited to see Rodarius Williams really show us that, even when he's being targeted, when they're trying to pick on him, he's coming back. He's bouncing back. He's a feisty player. And I think he's going to make this roster because of that. He is capable of playing in the slot. As we saw today, he is capable of playing on the boundary. They have used him as a gunner at times, but I think just his application as a defensive back is what is going to help him make this roster, and they're trying to use him in different ways. But that's kind of why they felt comfortable, trading away Isaac Yiadom. I mean, we'll see what happens with Majay Harper and Quincy Wilson, but I think Rodarius Williams, they feel good about him. He's a guy that needs just a year to develop the experience. He probably won't get a lot of playing time, but having a guy like that who is capable of coming in and playing at least at an adequate average level is all you need from a rookie 6th-round pick. So, Anthony, did you see anything from Rodarius Williams that stood out? Do you think that he's a lock to make the roster? Do you think that he's still got a long way to go?
I don't know if he has a long way to go, but he does have a way to go to lock himself into the 53-man roster, again, due to the fact that the Giants have a lot of depth at that position. They've got a lot of good players in the secondary. Rodarius, 6th-round pick, he's looked really good all throughout training camp. He's had a few standout performances in practices. Struggled last week against the Jets in coverage, looked better this week. I think he led the team in tackles today, which is also pretty cool. Rodarius, yeah, playing well. Definitely rooting for the kid. Definitely think he has a good shot of making the 53-man roster. But no, at this point, I don't think you can call him a lock. I don't think that he's done anything to warrant just saying that he's instantly on the roster. Just need to see him continue to improve day by day, little by little, continue to string together these good practice performances and everything like that. But yeah, I'm very encouraged by Rodarius. I hope to see him make the 53. If I had to make a prediction, I'll say that he will make the 53. But at this point, I don't think it's you're at the point where you can say that he's a lock to make it, though.
Yeah, that's fair. And I'm excited to see the starters get some more time next week. Really, that's the big audition for the starters, right? Next week against the Patriots. That's what Joe Judge said. We're going to get them out there. We want to manage their load this week, and then next week we'll really get them involved. And after probably a lighter practice with the Pats.
Yeah, and one thing that I'll say, though, temper your expectations when you watch the starters play next week. Any fan watching this, I know we all get excited to see Daniel Jones.
It's going to be dull.
His first action. It's going to be extremely dull because they're going to run the most vanilla offense possible.
They don't want to show
give away anything from their schematics for the regular season. You won't see any trick plays. You'll see barely any creativity whatsoever from Jason Garrett's offensive play calling. Keep that in mind. But yes, we will see the starters play, and I am excited to see that because vanilla offense or not, you will be able to judge the offensive line's performance of that game based on how they're handling the pass rush or run blocking and whatever. So that's really what I'm going to be keeping an eye on next week, seeing where the starting offensive line is at that moment, since we're only 2 weeks out from the regular season at that point.
Yep. And another thing that is actually actively going on is the potential trading of Ryan Santoso, our backup kicker. So without Graham Gano, This is what Judge just said. If the Giants didn't have Graham Gano, Santoso would be their kicker. That's how good he is. And a lot of teams need a kicker, especially the New England Patriots, who they're going to be practicing with this upcoming week. The Patriots are in the market for a kicker. They're going to get a good look at Santoso. We'll see what maybe they can come up together. We know Bill Belichick is the master of gaining draft picks, whether through crazy means. So I think that this is an opportunity for the Giants to maybe get a 6th round, 5th round pick for Santoso. I can't imagine it's going to be anything great, but getting a 5th round pick for a kicker is a pretty damn good selection, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that I'll say about that is there were a select few Giants fans who weren't crazy about the Keon Crossen trade. They did complain because the Giants gave up a 2023 6th round pick.
Oh,
And
it's
Alex and
nothing.
I said, keep in mind, there's a lot of cuts to happen, and the Giants don't have to cut everybody. They can make some trades with the guys that they have on the back end of their roster, like Santoso. They can trade him, and they'll probably get that 2023 6th round pick value back, maybe even greater value for Santoso because he is a kicker, and kickers are viewed as a pretty valuable position nowadays, especially for teams that are in desperate need of a reliable kicker. So I do think that the Giants get a decent return on Santoso. He'll definitely be traded by the start of the regular season, no doubt, because there is a market for kickers in this league for sure. And the Giants are really lucky to have, a pair of good kickers on the team right now because you can just take that player, flip him for nice value. And I think that they're going to make their value back that they lost on the Keon Crossen trade, which I also was a fan of as well. So pretty good
Too.
stuff there. Happy for that. I think that the Giants did a really good job developing Santoso this offseason.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a 6th round pick at the end of the day. You can trade back in the 2nd round, one spot, and get a 6th round pick. Like, that's how easy it is to get 6th round picks. Like, the problem is you just don't want too many of them because end of the day, those are roster spots that, now we just added 2 6th round picks this offseason. How many late round guys you really want to you're really just getting them to compete for roster spots. Again, we don't even know if Gary Brightwell or O'Darius Swims will make the roster. There's a possibility they don't make the roster. You want more high round picks always. So that's, the general consensus. I'm not upset about getting rid of a 6th round pick if you're going to get a good special teams player in return who can make an impact and elevate a position of weakness potentially. So totally fine with that. Speaking of special teams, Cam Brown today was an absolute menace. 2 tackles on the first 2 punts. He looked really good, was getting down the field nicely. I thought he stood out, and I think for the most part, that's a good sign for the special teams unit to really showcase some of that talent. I know the starters aren't even contributing on that right now, whether it's Jabril Peppers, Kadarius Toney, some of those guys, even on the offensive line. We might have some guys on that unit, but let's talk about some running backs really quickly because the running back group looked pretty solid today. I will say Corey Clement and Devontae Booker stood out to me. Corey Clement finished with 9 carries for 30 yards, 3.3 average. Devontae Booker, 6 carries for 27 yards and a touchdown. Also important to keep in mind, this is the reserve offensive line here, so can't really expect much out of these running backs, but they looked pretty good. Devontae Booker opened the game with a nice couple of runs. He had a touchdown, dove over the line there. So I think positive feedback from the running backs. I think that for the most part, it's Saquon Barkley, Devontae Booker, Corey Clement. I know a lot of people say Sandro Platzgoomer, but I don't even think he got a rep today. He didn't even get a carry today. Gary Brightwell had 3 carries for 7 yards, did not look so good, but the blocking was horrendous during his runs as well. So for the most part, this is, the running back crew. I like the Booker and Clement pairing as the reserves behind Saquon. I think that's what they'll go with. Both of those guys got the most reps out of any other running back. So Anthony, did anyone stand out to you specifically? And do you see anything that really made you think, okay, this is, I feel confident with this guy?
I really like the way that Devontae Booker was running the football. He has that nice downhill, rushing attack that I'm just going to run through you kind of mentality that I really like. But he also has that paired with very good contact balance that allows him to kind of bounce off defenders at times and make sure that he does fall forward and not backwards. I saw him fall forwards pretty much on every single rep. I liked him jumping over the pile over the offensive line into the end zone on the touchdown. I thought that was pretty cool. And then I think as a nice change of pace, so you get Devontae Booker, who's kind of more of your downhill run through you. Corey Clement comes in, and he's kind of that shiftier guy, right? So he's kind of side to side, and he also looked really good running the football. Both of those guys did. And another name that I want to throw out there, okay, Gary Brightwell, I wasn't impressed, but you're right. The offensive line was not playing well when Gary Brightwell was in. But Elijah Penny, the fullback, they've been playing him at running back too during this preseason. And I thought he looks pretty good as the running back. He had 2 carries for 16 yards, 1 rush for 9 yards. He also had another 9-yard rush that was taken back, I believe, from a holding penalty. But he looks pretty good, and he was pretty good as a receiver. 1 reception for 7 yards. And so, yeah, I really like Elijah Penny. I think, there was like a small battle between him and I believe it was Cullen Gillespie as the fullbacks. But Eli Penny, man, he is a good fullback, and he's proven that he can even fill in as a decent running back if need be. So he's definitely a lock for this roster. I think that he's going to beat out Cullen Gillespie for that fullback
Gillespie is a
position
special
based on
teams
how he
guy
played
too.
today. Yeah, that's true. That's fair as well. But Eli Penny, I mean, didn't he have a blocked punt against the Arizona Cardinals in
I mean, he's a good
2019?
player.
So,
I like
I
him.
love Eli Penny. Like, he does a lot for this team. He is a
He
very
does.
good player, and I think
Tough
that
son of a gun.
Yep, and I think that's really been highlighted how impactful he can be during this preseason. So they're definitely impressed with him. And yes, I agree with you, Corey Clement, Devontae Booker. I feel very comfortable with those guys as running backs 2 and 3 behind Saquon Barkley.
Agreed. And let's take a look at some of the receivers. I do want to do one little segment ranking the receivers. Sills gang, absolutely. Touchdown pass, 3 receptions for 31 yards and a score, a long of 19. He stood out, man. Right, David Sills had, that second half of the game. He was quiet, didn't have a reception the first half of the second half. They targeted him a bunch of times. He drew a pass interference on that 2-point conversion that got stuffed because the blocking was horrendous up front. Dante Pettis, 3 receptions for 25 yards. Damian Wills had 2 for 21. CJ Board had 1 for 12. And Rice and John stood out 3 for 58, which was the most on the team, including a 29-yard reception. He was killing it up the seams, really standing out. He was attacking those seams. He had a pass from Lewerke and from Glennon that really just nailed it. So that was really positive from Rice and John. He did pick up an injury that seemed to be non-contact, but he walked off under his own power. Seemingly he's okay. So we'll get more information on that when it comes. But the wide receiver group, man, they looked pretty solid. I thought David Sills had a good game. Again, he's a guy that I hope makes the roster. He works extremely hard, but I don't know if they're going to carry 7 receivers. The way that I rank these receivers right now, Kenny Golladay, Sterling Shepard, Kadarius Toney. Rather, I'd probably go with Kenny Golladay, Sterling Shepard, Darius Slayton, Kadarius Toney, CJ Board, because I like John Ross, because both of those guys, exactly, both those guys have special teams abilities. And then really at the bottom, it's like that's 6 right there at the bottom. It's Dante Pettis, it's David Sills. Who is it going to be? You know what I mean? Like who's going to get that spot? I think it's going to be David Sills, but you never know.
I do too, because I think David Sills has played the best, the most consistently good player in terms of all those backup wide receivers has been David Sills. He showed out in multiple practices, and now 2 weeks in a row, he's looked really good in the preseason. So I do think that David Sills has worked really hard and has earned a roster spot. Of course, it's too soon to tell because there's like 30 cuts that the Giants have to make in the next couple of weeks. So we'll see, but I am pretty confident in David Sills right now. I thought that he played really well. The touchdown grab that he had today was super impressive. 50-50 ball, he made it all his. He had the cornerback had no chance with the way that David Sills was boxing him out and going up for that ball. He just ripped it away from him. That was pretty awesome to see. Love that physicality. Love that red zone presence that David Sills provides for the team. And yeah, I do think that he will be the wide receiver out of that group that makes it. But I also want to say Damian Willis has been pretty impressive to me too. I saw him have a really nice catch where he kind of had to stretch out over his head and make a grab. And he also had the touchdown last week against the Jets. So Damian Willis, guy that the Giants signed just a few weeks ago, another player who's playing pretty well on the back end, could definitely be a practice squad player at the very least if he doesn't make the roster. Like I said, I think David Sills is the one that makes the roster. CJ Board has been all right. I haven't been super impressed with him, but I understand he does contribute on special teams. But he also did muff a punt today. He fumbled a punt.
Yeah, he's more of a gunner,
got to
though.
keep that in mind. Yeah, he is more of a gunner. They did have him try some punt return. He dropped it. He did recover it, but still, I don't know. I'm not super crazy about him. Yeah, I don't think he's ever returning punts during the regular season. But you guys know me. I'm huge on the David Sills gang. I want him to make the roster so badly. I think he deserves it. And he's playing like he deserves it as well. And I'm also impressed with Rice and John. Thought he had a really good game going vertical up the seams as a tight end, kind of being that guy that we want Evan Engram to be. So maybe if Evan Engram, God forbid, goes down with any injury this season, if Rice and John is healthy, hopefully this injury that he picked up today is nothing serious. If Rice and John is healthy, he could be a pretty nice fill-in for the Evan Engram playing style.
John Ross should 100% be returning punts. Because he's not going to be, if he's healthy, he's not going to be an every down player. He's more of a gadget guy, a deep threat. But if they're going to get the most out of John Ross and the money they paid him, he's got to be returning punts. He has to be. I don't want to see Jabril Peppers returning punts, although I would love to see him. I'm just scared of the injury. He got injured on a punt return against Chicago a couple years ago, and that was very annoying because he missed the rest of the season with a lower back injury. Kadarius Toney, I'm okay with seeing him return punts as well. But John Ross is the guy. That guy, blazing speed. If he gets into open space, nobody can catch him. Not a single person. But let's talk about a couple players really quickly that really just did not look good at all. And the first one, Devontae Downs. How he's made it this far on the Giants, how he has stuck around for 2 years, I do not understand. He has no ability as a coverage linebacker. Absolutely none. He has very little ability as a run stopper. He is an oversized middle linebacker who is slow to the football, does not understand positioning and getting into open space and filling gaps. He is always getting out-muscled, outplayed by backups. And I'm like, how is this guy even on the roster? So highly doubt he makes it. I'd much rather have Carter Coughlin in that role that he plays, because even though Carter Coughlin is not a great pass coverage guy, I'd rather have him there than Devontae Downs because of the potential. You know what I mean? It's just about potential at this point. Carter Coughlin is way more than Devontae Downs. Anthony, I imagine you feel a similar way.
Of course I do. I've been woefully unimpressed by Devontae Downs since last year. I'm not a fan of him. I think he misses a lot of tackles that he shouldn't be missing. He's just unable to grab the player. He just grabs air. And I see that happen too frequently with Devontae Downs, and he doesn't provide anything in coverage. So it's not even like, you're losing one aspect to a game to get, a gain in another. It's just like, he just doesn't look like a very good player to me. And I hate to say that, because I know that these players work really hard, but I'm just woefully unimpressed with Devontae Downs every time I see him on the field. So yeah, I'm not a fan of his. I don't want to see him earn a spot on the 53-man roster, because I would feel like he is taking a spot from someone who is more deserving. Because to me, I've seen a lot of players working really hard, playing really well at their positions. Even though those positions are full of depth, they're more deserving of a roster spot to me than Devontae Downs is. I understand our depth at linebacker is not the best, but Devontae Downs is also just not a good player in my eyes. He doesn't do anything that's really impressive at all. In fact, his most impressive trait might be his ability to make such consistently bad plays on an every down basis.
That was very quietly funny. Like, I just did not see that coming.
Yeah, I hate to be that guy, but
his best trait is being
not a Devontae
bad.
Downs fan. Yeah.
That's hilarious. But yeah, so he is a guy that I highly doubt he makes the roster. But to wrap this episode up, let me give you a good little positive spin right here. Julian Love said that Joe Judge gave him the nickname Duct Tape because he can be used to cover up any situation. We love that. We have been saying this about Julian Love for such a long time. He is the perfect utility piece for a defense. He can play strong safety, free safety, slot corner, boundary corner. He can do it all. They just sent him out there today to play the first half just because without him, the defense would be an absolute mess. He was really relaying the plays, making sure people were in the right position. Like, he's really being that general on the defense when Logan Ryan isn't out there, right? He's capable of being that player. They sent him out just to make sure the defense wasn't an absolute just horrendous unit. So I think that was a good sign for the Giants. They got him out there. They trust him in that role. And I think that's a big thing for them. And he does have a lot of value here, guys. But I hope you enjoyed this episode, just breaking down a quick reaction video of this preseason game, the second one of the year. Next week, we have a big one against the Patriots. We're going to see Daniel Jones. We're going to see hopefully some of these receivers, Sterling Shepard, Darius Slayton. Hopefully we can see some Kadarius Toney. Probably not Kenny Golladay. Maybe, probably not. We'll see. Kadarius Toney, I'd love to see him get on the field, even for a couple of snaps. The starting offensive line, those starting defenders for a couple drives, maybe just the first quarter or whatnot. Hopefully everyone comes away unscathed today. No significant injuries, knock on wood. Didn't seem to be anything too crazy. That was a really positive sign. Of course, the groin injury to Mondre Harper and the ankle to Quincy Wilson. We don't know how serious those things are. We'll keep you guys updated as always, my friends. So make sure to subscribe below on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify, and we'll catch you guys on the next video.